As long as I can be heard now, I switched over to my other PC because my beginning part will have to do with how Windows 11 happened in an upgrade. I will be talking today about, my name is Bob Primak, and I am a member of the group, and I use computers. I was on Windows 10 on a little PC called an Intel NUC, and I decided I needed to have a backup PC after a little disaster where I thought I had lost the PC, and I ended up having to log into one of these meetings on my Chromebook. So I got myself a new tower PC, which came with Windows 11. So I have two cases. One case is where you're upgrading from a Windows 10 PC, and it is a special case of upgrading because we who have Intel 11th gen processors, Core processors, Core I, whatever, there is a very special edge case regarding Windows 11 22H2 feature update, which I will probably get into at some point. I do want to see if anything happened. That's okay. I think I will start going into my document with a screen share of my desktop. And I am hearing a little background probably at the community center, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's us.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out where the speaker needs to go so that everybody can hear.
Yeah, that's just the church mice. That's fine.
That's where it should be.
I don't care, but I don't mind church mice.
Your voice just moved and it really messed me up, Bob. So that's okay. Give me a minute and I'll come back to reality.
What did you say?
They moved the speaker. I wasn't paying attention and your voice moved. I'm saying, WTF.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we're having all kinds of nice things happening, and by way of technical.
This is cool. We have a little levity in the meeting.
This is one of our early hybrid meetings for anybody
Right.
anybody in posterity who sees this video.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so we want to let everybody know we will have some technical issues and some messing around in the background. Hopefully you'll get the gist of what I'm talking about. Anyway, I just want to do a very brief overview of what PC I'm talking about. And this should come up in my browser, and I should be able to bring you guys over to where you won't be in the way.
Yeah,
And
we see the webpage.
it is you don't have a black square over NUC Performance Kit?
Nope.
No.
Yeah.
Good. So this is what it is. It's 11th gen Core i5. And the other specs you don't really need to know, although it does support Windows 11, they say. And it does support Windows 10. It came... Well, I first installed Windows 10 full retail on it. So that's the only important thing about that.
So Bob,
Now,
how old is that PC? What vintage is it?
It's a NUC kit, which was about, they put it out about a year or two ago.
Okay.
Unfortunately, with these NUC PCs, the support cycle is very short, and it's already considered obsolete. They're now supporting 12th gen and upward. I don't know.
Bob, can you just explain what a NUC is? Some people don't know what that is.
Yeah, I do want to be able to explain it, and let's see whether or not I have anything on in this computer on that, because I think I have. If it's not on this computer, it's on the other computer, and we'll get to it later. I'm just seeing whether I have in my browser those bookmarks. No, I do not. I think I will change the screen share so that you can see basically what it looks like.
The Holy Roman Empire. Was it holy? Was it Roman? Was it an empire? Discuss.
I'm back.
Oh, we hardly got off talking.
All right. What you guys want to know is whether or not I can pull up my Intel NUC
This is, I have to share.
So Bob, it showed that you had 4 cores and it's hyper-threaded, so it shows 8 threads.
Yes. Okay, this is the kit. What I was trying to find was my bookmark for, just a moment. There, now I can grab it. I'm trying to find my bookmark for Simply Nook. Maybe I did not bookmark it. I hope I did. Well, I'll tell you what I can do. I can just simply Google it because I know where it is. Nook 11 PAKI 5. Let's go with that one. That's the Intel on it.
You need help, Harry?
And what I'm looking for is Simply Nook, which is where I bought it from. There. This is what this guy looks like. I'll accept the cookies so that I can show you this. And what I want to do is go a little big. And this is what it is. It's about the same. 2 packs of playing cards is how tall it is. One side of it has an SD card slot, and the other side has a Kingston lock. And this side is the back side. And it just has USB ports, HDMI. This thing is Thunderbolt and power, and it has some display. Around the front end, it has another Thunderbolt and another USB. Total of 3 USB. And it has headphone speaker combined, and this is the power button. So that's what a NUC typically will look like. Some are a little taller, and you can put in an extra internal component. You can add components of RAM, of storage, and you can add, you can wire in some things with jerry-rigging, but it's awfully tight inside that case. And trying to take it's a single board system. Trying to take the board out is a real pain and a bother, and it's too delicate an operation for me to do.
Bob, what's the
Bob?
physical size of
Bob?
that, dimensions?
2
Bob,
packs of
question?
playing cards.
Bob, question.
Yeah.
Can you, what is the rectangular size of the box?
Okay, about 4.5 by 5 by about 2 tall.
Okay, because that's quite similar to the devices we're using here to power the presenter and the audience. It's probably not as, these are not as modern as yours. Although I think is an i5 and it's 4 cores and 8 threads, so it's similar. But probably a lot of things are not the same. I think yours is more modern.
Harry?
Yeah.
The price
What is the
point-
one that you have? Sorry, I'm sorry, Bob.
What is the
Harry.
one that I have? I have an HP Elite Desk Core 5 V Pro. That's all I can read on the front of it. So it's a 10-year-old or 5-year-old, 6-year-old machine that is
Okay.
now being offered at used at discounts, which I got for $125 a piece.
And
Yeah.
Bob, just for comparison, about how much is the NUC?
Well, it depends on how you want to configure it.
Or
If
pick a number.
Yours.
As mine was configured, it was in the $1,000 range. And don't
Okay.
forget, this is the 11th gen, very up to date. So you'd expect to be paying more.
Yeah.
Sold usually to hobbyists and tinkerers, people who really like to get inside a computer's hardware, as well as working with software. Mine actually came with a Linux operating system. I added Windows, and I added all kinds of external devices. You used to be able to add extra ports on a lid for USB 2 for your keyboard and your mouse to conserve ports, but this particular one doesn't support that. So I think I can stop this share. This is how this system was, and we can talk about how it was upgraded.
Okay. So let me share my screen again. Okay, so we have the specs on what I had, and I'll just lower my browser. So when I upgraded, the first thing to do is to check hardware compatibility because Windows 11 never guarantees that. And I'm just going to run us through a little utility called Why Not 11. By the way, I have a PDF of my document, so all of these links will be made available in chat at the end. So let me see if I have, yeah, Why Not 11? This will run some quick checks, and it takes a little while to check the graphics because that's a longer test. My computer is ready for Windows 11 and all of its updates. So it has the basic hardware configuration that I need. I should have been able to upgrade it to the 22H2 fall update. Harry, you're coming in great with that video.
My wife
Wonderful.
arrived.
We have
Bob?
arrived and we are good. Yes.
Why did you not use the Microsoft provided tool to check for upgrade?
It doesn't give as much information. It doesn't give as much data on which CPUs you have, which drivers are not right. If this one showed, if Why Not 11 showed a failure or a red box, which is what it would do, it would give details or links to details. These informational links are also descriptions of what this means to you. And it gives you an idea, how would you have to modify your hardware if you could? If it's a laptop, you won't be able to. And it will tell you why you cannot upgrade. If it's TPM2, there is a way that earlier Intel processors could work around it in the BIOS through basically a software shim of some sort, but it could get around that block. And there are registry ways of getting around several of these blocks. I do not recommend that for performance reasons and
Let
stability reasons.
me follow up. Does it, in terms of just for information for people, because I understand what you're saying. If you're a user and you want to upgrade to 11, does it really make any difference whether you have this granularity of detail or Microsoft comes back and says, thanks for playing?
It varies.
Okay,
and
go ahead.
it may vary in future upgrades. I will show you what happened on my computer, which was eligible, and something happened with the 22H2 update. Something that did not happen on a new PC that was made for Windows 11. So even if it's eligible, you may have some issues which may need to be worked through in the future. I would like to keep these to the minimum on any production machine. If it's an experimental machine, go ahead, knock yourself out, go wild. But if it's a production machine, you want rock solid stability and you want future security updates. Okay, so getting back to our little story, this isn't really a very long story, so it's okay we have these interruptions. Drivers. Since I'm pure Intel, I can run something called the Intel Driver Update Assistant. I may be able to do this. I'm in a limited user account. Let's do this a different way. Let's go with Intel.
There we go.
There we go. I'm just going to try to open this, and it runs in the browser after it's been installed. Now I'm working from cached data, so let me refresh my results. It scans your system. And like many others, Dell has a utility similar to this. It will then go through and it will tell you in great detail what your system has and what it may need. There's a green check mark if it's good. There'll be a yellow triangle if it's not. And then you will have an offer to download the updated drivers. At one point, I ended up with a BIOS update. Now, people get scared about flashing their BIOSes, but on these NUC PCs, I just simply used the program. It was just like a driver update, and then it restarted and it went into the BIOS update routine, which is normally an F7 routine. And instead of having to grab something off of my local drives, which is where people run into trouble, or off of USB, it just simply reached out onto the internet over to Intel, and it grabbed it that way. There are advantages and there are disadvantages. There are risks to grabbing anything off of the internet because you might not get a clean download. It backs up the old BIOS first, so you can restore it if anything goes wrong. You're not likely to remain bricked for very long. And so you can roll back, you can restore. But anyway, I did have a BIOS update, which, by the way, did not help my issue. Because I had something else going on. So,
By the way, just on the flashing your BIOS, never ever stop it midway. Don't think, oh, I don't want to do this, and interrupt it, unplug your computer or anything like that. Then you're almost guaranteed to have a brick computer.
yeah, even that condition, as long as it got past the backup phase, the NUC routine is capable of recovering from it. And it also has a USB routine that you can download on another PC. And you can run that and see if you can get that to work. Usually you can do one of those two things, but no, do not let the power fail. If you're plugged in, have an uninterruptible power supply, battery backup, the whole 9 yards. It'll only take a few minutes, but during those few minutes, you do not want any fluctuation of your power. That's the only thing that I know of that can really brick a NUC during that kind of a problem, during a BIOS update.
Actually, Bob, doing other devices too that are doing updates. If for some reason you have a smart television, you can update that, and it comes along, you'll get the same issue with that. If you interrupt it in the middle of the update, you can brick the TV.
Right.
There's lots of good stuff. Most of us have learned the hard way.
On most devices, including my printer, these are called firmware updates.
Yeah.
And they're not quite as extreme as a BIOS flash. But a phone, for example, yes, that's a full flash of the ROM.
Yeah.
And that is very, it's a little antsy. Pins and needles. So I've covered why not 11, just in case you want to know why you're having difficulty. Drivers and support. And so for the original Windows 10 to Windows 11 upgrade, first thing to do, back up your system, back up your data. Make duplicate copies to different drives or places. You can even use the cloud. There's no problem in that. It's just for a system image backup, you want a full image backup. I use Macrium Reflect Free for that. And just give you a little peek at what that's all about. Macrium software, Macrium Reflect Free. It's now in version 8, and skip the commercial and go into just the free version. And you can choose all the partitions that are needed in order to have a bootable Windows system. And it also has rescue media you can make, Windows 10 or Windows 11. It's not really the PE, they call it RE, recovery environment. It used to be called the pre-install environment, and you used to have a huge download. Now it's much smaller, and it's only the rescue environment. This is different from making Windows rescue media, which you might also want to do. There's lots of different ways of rolling back if things go haywire.
Bob?
Yeah.
So does that just saves the operating system? It doesn't save any of your data in doing that freezing version, right?
If you do an image backup, it will contain all your personal data folders.
Oh,
But that's an image backup, not a file backup. So you just have a bunch of ones and zeros that don't mean anything to anybody until you start laying it back down on the disk again.
right.
Actually, in Macrium Reflect, if you boot the recovery media, you can explore just as with Windows Explorer, and you can even copy. And
Selectively copy?
yes, but you cannot
Also,
actually
it must read the
selectively-
VTOC somehow and be able to decode it.
in the free version, you really cannot restore individual files or folders. For that, you need to upgrade to the pro version.
Okay.
Sure.
However, you do have the ability to see these things, and I have successfully copied files if they were individual files. But trying to restore folders or system areas, I would do a full restore anyway in a situation like that, because you never know what else has been damaged.
Mhm.
I know that Windows has a lot of repair tools that are more specific, more granular, but I find they're usually a waste of time these days, and I always end up having to roll back to an image. Your mileage may vary. You may be able to use SFC scan now and others. Ted, you have something short to say? You'll have to
Microphone
unmute.
turned on.
Yeah,
Right.
there you go.
So I went through a very painful process about a month ago now, and I'm still recovering from it. I came to the conclusion after trying every known trick that I knew of how to restore Windows 10 functionality that I was in water that was over my head. So I took it to Micro Center because I bought it from Micro Center originally.
Yeah.
And for a mere $375 or something like that, they did a test of everything, and I said I think it's just a corrupted Windows in there, and they said, yeah, we'll test everything. They tested everything, and then they backed up everything that was on the C drive to an external hard drive that they give you as part of the payment, and then reinstalled Windows from scratch.
Yeah.
So Windows works fine, but and I have all the stuff that was on the C drive, but what I don't have is working various applications that I have installed in the past, because I don't have all of the installation crap anymore for them. And so they're just sitting there dumb.
Unfortunately,
Gradually, some of those are recovering. I've got Office
Ted.
back, and I have Zoom back, but there's
Ted.
a handful of other things I don't have.
I have something in hindsight, 2020 hindsight. There is a utility from Nearsoft which can recover your license keys, and that should have been run before you let anybody reinstall Windows. You should recover your license keys, and there are some utilities, including one from Nearsoft, which can find all or most of your license keys. Also, Belarc Advisor, if you are able to run it.
The
will be-
problem is, of course, that at the stage when I took it to Micro Center, it wouldn't get into past the boot phase. It just tried to start Windows, and it crapped out immediately. And every Windows related improvement that you have, back it up to this, reset to that, whatever, it crashed on trying to do any of those. So you couldn't get into Windows.
There still is one hope, and that is if you can make a bootable USB drive on another computer, you can use portable utilities. And there are a couple of them that can recover license keys. You just point it to the Windows partition, and if there is something recoverable there, you might still get your license keys.
That's what it is, Bob. You may have some issues with registry stuff. It's a little bit more complicated than just license keys generally, because I've done the same thing. And sometimes it's when I go computer to computer, sometimes it's hard to get them back, and you have to do a little bit more work. And Ted, there's no free lunch here. You got to do some work to get the applications back.
Okay, what I'm really saying is you need the installers for all your applications.
And
Save those.
If you Google the individual applications for the installation, you may be able to find somebody who has them on a share somewhere, or somebody who has them on a torrent somewhere that you can get it and download that. because if they're old, nobody really cares that much about it. And you may be able to at least get to the point where you're running, and then you can move your data over and still have it working. So
Yeah,
again, there's no free lunch.
The one application that I really miss in a sense is that it came with my Nikon camera that basically would automatically take the files off the camera and put them into a nice arrangement where you had a file for each time that you had basically changed some of the parameters. So for instance, if it was you're shooting on one day and you want to shoot on another day, it would create another file. So you could recover all the photographs that were on the camera in the order that they were taken and sort them by various parameters and stuff.
Yeah,
Have you
I
gone,
think that should
have you
be
gone
on
to
the
the
easy
Nikon
someplace.
website?
Yeah, so I
Nikon
just
USA.com?
copied all those damn files into files that I made up myself.
Yeah.
And they have names on them, so I can retrieve them that way. But
Ted, you may be able to find that still at the Nikon website. Otherwise, unfortunately, OEM software does sometimes go out of support. I have had that happen with some webcams where not only the OEM software, but the webcam itself no longer has upgraded software for Windows 11. And they may or may not ever get an update. But anyway,
I think Nikon USA.com
but
has all the old software.
the other
there.
comment I had, and it's a question because I asked the guy who's doing the reinstallation, who presumably knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And I said, is it worthwhile trying to update my computer to make sure it can run Windows 11? And the computer is, about 4 years old. I think I bought it in 2017, end of the year. So it was manufactured sometime in the middle of 2017. So it's probably 5 years old from the standpoint of the circuit boards and things like that.
Yeah.
But it was pretty nice. It's Intel. I have 16 gigabytes of RAM, and I have a fairly fast processor. And he said no. Now, I don't know if he was now trying to be a salesman for Micro Center or whether he was being honest about things.
if it's up and running, you can use either the Microsoft PC Health Check or why not 11, and you can find out whether or not it might be worth your while.
Mhm.
Look at what the upgrades are recommended to be and see whether or not you can afford the cost. If you don't have the TPM2 chip, adding that is not economically a good idea these days. They're expensive and difficult to get a hold of.
Uh-huh.
And Bob, if you really want to force it, you can, because I looked at doing this on my older machine, is you can run the setup from the command line, and there are command line switches that'll bypass the TPM stuff.
Yeah, that and at least one registry hack.
Right.
But you're doing that at your risk. There may come a time in the future you won't get the next feature update.
Oh, I tiptoe along the edge all the time.
Okay, but in any event, Windows 10 is going to be supported for several more years. No need to
Exactly.
panic. No need to panic. There just won't be any new features in Windows 10. There will be security updates.
But I like my Windows 3 machine.
Yeah, if I may move along now, there's something
Yes.
you can do. Suppose you do not want to be moving up to Windows 11. You don't want the offer and anything like that. Well, there is a little solution to that. Gibson Research, which also did Never 10 for those who wanted to stay on Windows 7. There are no forced upgrades the way there were to Windows 10. But if you want to make really sure you stay on a particular feature update until it expires, or maybe even past its expiration, if you want to live on the edge, there is, let me hit that, from Gibson Research. It's called In Control. This avoids having to go into group policies or into your registry. This will do it for you. And it's a reliable company. You just specify your release that you want to, your version and your release that you want to stay on. you have to get Microsoft's current name for the release. By the way, it's 22H2, not 2022. Some people have been saying it's 2022. No, they did not change it. But you might want to stay on 21H2. And then you hit the take control button and you will not get offered 22H2 until you're ready for it, which is always a nice thing to be able to do. But if you're like folks like John Rudy, you will want to allow things to just go as Microsoft wants them to, with as little fuss.
Not here to defend himself.
Yeah. You can't
No,
insult him when he's not
I'm
here.
not knocking John at all. This is very reasonable. This is
It's just
very
a cheap shot.
reasonable
It's
point of
okay.
view. No, it's a very reasonable point of view. And all I'm saying is, if he were here, John Rudy would probably be saying things like that.
Yes.
That's correct.
But anyway, so I got my Windows 11 upgrade for this machine through Windows Update. And first I had to get the latest monthly updates. Then I made a mistake in my document. I meant 22H2.
Ooh.
And I am
Yes.
going to
Say
save that change. That will not be in my PDF unless I do an export as PDF. And do that, and save. Okay, it's saved somewhere.
Yeah, you'll
Okay.
find it on your own time.
Yeah, I can definitely see where I saved it, because I saved it in this PC. I
Desktop.
believe it's on my desktop. Good, because that's where I need it if I'm going to upload it later. Okay, so the point is, I finally did get offered the latest feature update, and I do mean 21H2, because what it did first was it upgraded to Windows 11. It was ready for the Windows 11 upgrade. You guys got me a little ahead of myself.
Oh, now you have to go through all this again.
No, that's okay.
Somebody
That's
else
okay.
has to
The
do this kind of
export.
stuff, 'cause this happens to me all the time.
So hardware is cheap. I think I spent $200 for a desktop and about $1,000 for a more expensive
Right.
desktop.
Not to mention
I
your
mean
time.
that laptop, yeah.
Not to mention your time.
Well, we're retired, so our time is
Yeah.
probably
Okay,
5 cents an hour.
Staying in focus, so we finished within an hour and a half.
All right.
I got the upgrade to Windows 11, and it came up to Windows 11 21H2 through Windows Update. This was not offered the 22H2 feature update through Windows Update. If that happens to you, do not force an update to the newer version. With 22H2, you could experience serious system instability if you do try to force this update. After some research, I found that there was a driver or two that needed to be updated in order to be eligible for 22H2 on this NUC. And so there were two things that I did. First, I went to Microsoft and downloaded the Windows 11 Installation Assistant. Now, the reason why you would choose this Installation Assistant instead of Windows Update is because the Installation Assistant runs through a little bit more of a process than the Media Creation Installer. It will, if it runs into a problem, it will exit the installer, go over to Microsoft Update and see if it can download some drivers or anything else that may be needed. And then you may be able to get back into the installation routine. Sadly, this did not happen on this NUC. It came up with, instead of a cryptic error message, it came up with a message saying your hardware is not compatible with this update. And that was actually true. So I wanted to figure out what was the block. A bit more online research led me to this ominous thing. Windows 11 22H2 blocked due to blue screens on some Intel 11th gen systems with SST sound drivers. I upgraded the driver to what was said to be a safe version. The installation assistant still wouldn't do it. And so I did some cleanups and the BIOS refresh happened and all that. It just simply took a little time for things to get sorted out to where when I ran the update assistant, it was coming up on patch Tuesday, but it wasn't quite there. I'd say it was about 10 days after the release of 22H2. I finally was able to get it to go through because Microsoft Update finally had something that fixed whatever was wrong. Now, there are some things, I think this is what might have happened to me. This isn't really something that'll crash your system, but there's a block on 22H2 and some systems due to printer drivers, which might reduce the functionality of your printer until you can upgrade. And so anyway, once the Windows 11 installer was convinced that my sound and printer drivers were okay, it went through. So now I had an in-place upgrade and the future update. Now it was time to do another. Yeah.
Do you know what would have happened if in fact you went to the device driver? This is probably not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
Went to the device driver and deleted the two devices, rebooted the machine, and let the OS replace the device drivers with brandy new versions that it thought worked. You think that would have made a difference?
No, it already had the latest.
Well, it isn't necessarily the latest, because when one of the things a computer does when it reboots is it looks for new devices.
Yeah.
And it'll find your printer, it'll find your sound. And so it'll install device drivers that it believes is compatible with those devices and the OS. So you think that would have solved the problem differently, or did you try that?
Yes, I did, and no, it didn't.
Fair enough.
I may still have had a Windows old file on the computer that was still active. And after the 10-day period, of course, that disappears. That might have been one source, but I simply think something got into Microsoft Update in the interim that became available. And when it checked with Microsoft Update this time, it picked something up. I know it did. And it installed something new from Microsoft Update that would not have come through in the device driver. So all good suggestions, but this time it's just a matter of waiting until the feature update is more ready for more machines. You just have to wait it out sometimes. So now I did have it. It was time for another round of backup and then call it a day. Ted, is it something short? If you unmute.
It's another definition of hell. Yeah.
Okay, well, Ted does have his hand up. Maybe we'll pick up on him.
He just doesn't put it down.
Okay.
Oh, no, I had a short little thing. I didn't notice this muted. So I did run Windows, why not 11? And when I ran it, it said CPU compatibility came out red, not supported, it said.
Right. That means it's probably Intel CPU does not have all the features that are asked for in the upgrade.
Yeah, it's a Core i7.
i7?
Yeah.
There's a few of those that will upgrade, but most won't. And you can use a registry trick to force it to upgrade and trick in the installer, as Peter said.
It really matters what gen
Exactly,
Core
Stan.
i7 you have. I think it has to be 8.
The Core if you're saying Core i7, I thought you were saying 7th gen.
No,
7th gen, some will and some won't, but you have to check the generation.
Yeah, it's Core i7 70 7,700.
Okay,
Well, that's the speed, or number for it. But you have to say what generation the CPU is. It'll tell you somewhere in the about what generation the CPU is.
Yeah.
just from that number, I do know what it is. It's a 7th gen, but it may still have been Skylake. And Skylake is not eligible
Not eligible.
because
I think
Skylake
basically
lets
that's
the
Microsoft thinks it's too slow.
Well, it's
No,
3,800 megahertz, and
it's
it has,
it's the security. It's the TPM security. Skylake doesn't
Okay.
have the right TPM security.
uh,
Ted, I think it would be unwise for you to try to do the upgrade. You're probably not going to be happy with the results.
so the guy was being relatively honest.
Yeah, for once.
Yeah.
Okay, moving right
Okay.
along.
But based on what you said, that you think Windows 10 will be still kept in a moderate support level for the next year or so.
Oh, much more than a
Absolutely.
year. Probably about 2 to 3 years, maybe
2 to
even
3
4.
years.
Maybe even 4 years.
Okay.
You've got plenty of time to use up that PC.
It
Yes.
does matter what version of Win 10 you have, because some of them, I think it's one of them goes out of support in a couple weeks. So you do have to keep updating Windows 10 to keep the
Yes.
support.
21H2, it's either 21H1 or 21H2 will go out of support October this year. And then you've got until October next year with another feature update. Most Win 10 machines will be able to update within the time frame required.
Do they inform you of the dates? I have not received any notices.
I do not know about that. I would have to research.
You can
Oh,
simply
yeah.
Google end of support for whatever version of Windows you have.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
there's a table. Microsoft maintains a table.
Yeah.
And it's a timetable. I think at this point I want to switch over to my other PC because I'm going to talk about the new PC setup and updates. Anybody else got any last minute things about older PCs or upgrading from Windows 10? Hearing none, I will switch over.
Bum, 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 bum. I can't do the Jeopardy music. I forget what it is.
It's close.
There we go.
All right, how many guys watch Jeopardy every night?
All right. Now,
It's good on.
okay,
Oh, yeah.
I've got
Different
my
host.
document, do my share. Let's make sure there's nothing in chat, nothing new. And share the screen. And there we are. Aren't you glad I know what I'm doing in
Whoa.
There we go.
This is where we are, the new PC. So I recently experienced what I thought was the death of my Intel NUC. It turned out that it was only the internal SSD that died, and I have in my documents some complaints about the BIOS in the NUC and how it handles the death of an internal component as opposed to the entire main board going bad. But anyway, the failure caused me to have to attend a Zoom meeting with a Chromebook. So my new PC, I went down to the Micro Center because I had short notice, and I bought a PowerSpec B685. Okay, so what's that? Just a moment here. I think I can do this. Control click. And getting down here, PowerSpec. I may want to go up to here. I'm going to move you guys so I can see. So this is a tower. And the important thing here is it does have an open slot, which is PCIe either 3 or 4. It's got 16 channels in it. And also the Wi-Fi card could be replaced. That's a PCIe by 1. And anyway, the take-home lesson on this new PC was it turned out the USB ports were not what they were trying to lead me to believe they were. They were the old 3.0. not 3.1. There's been a change in the naming of USB, and it's getting really ridiculous. And there's all kinds of sleight of hand going on with vendors about just exactly which gen and what speed, what's the bus speed, what's the total bus speed, what's the speed of both buses taken together. And they try to razzle dazzle you with technical details. But the bottom line is, you have only a certain number of buses, you have only a certain number of lanes, and therefore you have a certain maximum throughput. So anyway, I upgraded. And this is what I got. The Inatech PCIe USB 3.2 Gen 2 is actually the old USB. I don't know why they want me to reload the page, but I'll forget it. Anyway, from Inatech. And the main thing I want you to note is there's a lot of different ports, but there's really only 2 buses. So if you plug in a drive here and a drive here, you'll still get 10 gigabits per second theoretical throughput. In practice, it's reduced. But if you plug in another drive here and another drive here, now you've got only half that bandwidth, and so on. And that applies also to the C style as well as the A style. So that's an important consideration when I'm putting my backup drives in and I'm trying to get big files transferred. Okay, so I added the ports. And I had to modify the bracket in order to fit my case. That was some physical modification, which was interesting. I did initial setup of the PC, and it had Windows 11 Pro 21H2 already installed. But it did not have my favorite software installed. If this were Linux, I could just simply go to a package manager and open that, save the markings, and transfer those. But this is Windows, and you have to reach out to all kinds of other places. So there is a use I have for what is normally a software update checker. And it can be used also to generate a list of your software. And that's KC Software's Sumo. And what I want to do very quickly is call up that program on this PC. And I am going to open this. I am going to close that wizard because I want to just run a scan in here. And I'm going to close that because right now I'm not going to use the update feature. However, what I do want to do is expand what it is showing me so that I have an extra column in settings for the file path. And then I can see where the software is installed. That's because this list that you may see is really detailed. It's a lot of stuff. And you might be able to sort by company and get some idea of what the main programs are. Or you can sort by product and find out. You can also sort by whether or not it has an update. So there's all kinds of sorts that can go on. By default, it shows you whether there's an update. But I am going to sort it by company. And now I can take a tool and export. I don't want a text file. I want a spreadsheet file, which is actually .csv. And it immediately will want to open in my spreadsheet program. In my case, I use LibreOffice, but you might have Microsoft Office. And this spreadsheet can now be saved. It can be transferred to another computer, and you can tell what was on the old computer. I have about 34, 35 listings. Some people will have many, many more. It depends on whether it's listing particular components of various utilities you may have. So that's I'm going to do a save so that you can see that it actually is. I think that will be saved correctly. Let's see where I saved it. Okay.
In the sumo directory, Bob.
Yeah, I think it might be. So
It
what
is.
I'm
Look
going,
at the top.
okay, Samo. Okay, so
Just click on desktop on the left and you got it where you want it.
yeah, but I still have to get to where it is. I go to File Explorer and I go to Home. I'll do a search for Samo. And we want
That one, the first one.
the first one, yeah. Okay. Maybe I don't. Yeah.
Which should be, it shows where it's installed from right there.
Yeah, but I'm trying to find where it saved that file, and I am probably.
I think in the sumo directory. Try the very first one.
Okay.
Open
I'm
up the
trying that.
directory. There
All
it is.
Nope.
It's
That
the
isn't
dates
where it
wrong.
is.
Yeah, it is wrong. Okay, I lied.
It's in programs. It'll be in programs or program data. And let's see if Samo has program data. If it does not, then it's in programs. Program files.
Just save it again to a place where you know where it is.
Yeah.
Does
That's way too
LibreOffice
easy.
does Libre have a
Still
function
open,
where you
right?
can go most recent?
Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Let's try that in LibreOffice. Yeah, that'll save some time. LibreOffice. And what I want to do is
Recent
open.
Two down.
recent documents.
Recent.
There you go.
Okay, we'll do that.
Just.
Yeah, but now it's going to take forever because LibreOffice takes a long, long time to fire up when you do it this way, especially during a Zoom meeting. So anyway, now it's going to keep me from getting to anything.
Oh. Proof that you shouldn't take suggestions from the audience.
Yeah,
Well, I think just save it to where you know where it's gonna be is a little bit easier.
LibreOffice is going to take a long time to fire up, and I can't do anything outside of it. Okay, here we are. File
That's it
save
then.
as. And I'm going over to my desktop and we'll do it that way. Okay, so this goes over to the new computer. And what we have is on the desktop, that's it. And it will then travel to a new computer. Let's suppose that it came from the old computer and now it's over here on my new computer. And I can reference it in going out and looking for the software I want to install. Okay, so the other thing, okay, let's look at some of the software. I have LibreOffice. Another one that I like is for PDF handling, PDF split and merge, PDF SAM. I use the basic. And another one that I use is Inkscape, which is also useful for changing. It's useful for editing PDF documents and forms.
But doesn't that create SVC files?
You can actually export as PDF from Inkscape.
Okay.
By default, yes, it's SVG, but it can also export as other formats. LibreOffice Draw does the same sort of thing. It can export as other formats, though it usually does a graphics format. If it knows that it opened a PDF, it may offer to save as to export as PDF. So it's not save, it's export. I also have cleanup utilities, CCleaner, Glarisoft, Geek Uninstaller, because some programs just don't clean up after themselves when they uninstall. I use Malwarebytes. I use the free version, and Adware Cleaner. Those clean different things from what Windows Defender will clean up. And I use paint.net, and I use GIMP if I'm doing any kind of graphics or photo editing. I use VLC Player, which can play just about anything that you can find out there. And I use Irfan View for photo organizing and image organizing. The rest of my Sumo software list that I pulled over was mostly utilities. And if I ran it as administrator, there'd be a lot more of them. And when I need them, I'll download them. I don't usually install them right off the bat on a new PC. So once I had all the software I wanted and got rid of something that I didn't want Norton, so I used its remover to remove that from the new PC. Then I made backups, system and data, and extra copies just in case. So now I wanted to get this new PC up to the 22H2 feature update. This time I was able to do that through Windows Update. This is 12th gen Intel, not 11th gen. So it doesn't have the hardware block. Fortunately, it did not have anything wrong enough with the printer drivers so that the installer had any problems. So it went through and did everything it was supposed to do. And that meant that I was up to date. I did another round of backup, and then I was ready to install and test Zoom for my meetings. I do a lot of pre-testing before I do presentations. And I just want to finish up, and I am finishing up now. There are security features which are related to each other that may cause some problems. I have since tracked down some drivers which are not yet upgraded to be Windows 11 compatible, mostly my Logitech webcam. But there's also a Western Digital driver associated with some ancient hard drive I used to use. And this has to do with a feature called core isolation and memory protection. Core isolation has nothing to do with hardware cores in your processor. It has to do with the operating system. So I want to take just a second to give you a definition. Microsoft wants to protect the kernel of the operating system. And it uses virtualization to do this. It isolates certain processes in the memory, and it also forbids access without a secure TPM to code. It forbids access to certain critical system files, which may be in the operating system kernel, or they may be at the shell level. But anyway, core isolation refers to the operating system core, which
You don't think that's reasonable?
it's reasonable, but the drivers, the manufacturer drivers, have not yet caught up with this. In an enterprise environment, you would definitely want this locked down, and you would even lock down USB access so each device needs a code every time it plugs in. For a consumer, this would require using a lot of codes, and your code list in your BIOS is limited. You can't have infinite numbers of them. So it may not be practical. However, driver signing is really a good thing. And once everybody catches up with it, I'll turn the feature back on. But right now I can't do it because the webcam just doesn't have a driver for that. And I hope I don't have to upgrade the webcam because I just bought it. So, these are things which you can check in Windows Defender. I just want to show you where they are. Windows, the Security Center will open up in Windows 11, device security, core isolation details. And if you try to turn this on, you'll get a prompt.
Wow.
Oh, it did. It changed.
Okay. And it will say it cannot be done. And driver incompatibilities, review. And here they are, Logitech. And one from Western Digital. I don't know if this even shows the Western Digital. This just shows the Logitech. So if Logitech ever updates their driver, I'll be okay. Or if Microsoft forces the issue, I'll be okay. But right now, no, that's not ready for that security feature.
That's interesting. Logitech usually is pretty state of the art.
Yeah, but it's an older Logitech webcam. It's the C615. They are trying to push people to their 900 series.
That's what these are, yeah.
So they may or may not ever get an updated driver.
So it's an all or nothing on that feature.
Yeah, it is. Either you have
My
everything.
webcam at home that I have on my other machine, I think it was built in 1837.
Okay, but anyway, just finishing up with that,
Oh,
there
things
also
on the-
are secure boot items, which on this computer make it difficult to boot bootable USB drives. There's a switch in the BIOS on the motherboard that says either we're using the Microsoft UEFI or we're using other OS. But if I don't want to have to rebuild that entire TPM list from scratch or from a file, back it up and then rebuild it, I do not want to switch off secure boot. And so I use just one kind of bootable USB. There are actually two. If it's a Windows type, like WinPE, WinRE, or Macrium Reflect, Microsoft already has their codes entered in and you'll have no trouble. But if it's anything third party, if it's one of these ISOs or if it's got a Linux system in it, you will need a shim and an EFI boot partition. Ventoy has that, whereas the old Etcher and Rufus do not. And they will need to upgrade to be compatible with the Windows 11 secure boot features. So I only want to take a couple of more minutes so that Peter has a little time so that he can do
Take
his.
as much as you need, Bob, because mine is short. I can do it during a coffee break sometime.
Well, what I want to do is allow more questions. And before we get to Ted, does anyone else have a question?
Yeah. So you're auditing the software that's on there using Sumo. Have you done the same thing with the new PC that you did and ran it and then compared the source and the destination, the old PC and the new PC? Make sure they have comparable software and you haven't forgot something?
Yes, I can do that. In fact, that's one use for the spreadsheet. If I missed something, I can compare side by side. And if I do compare side by side, I could put them both into spreadsheets and do them side by side. And if anything's different, then I check and see whether I want to put that in.
You don't want to compare them side by side, Bob. You want to find a diff program.
You can do that too.
It's probably, I think it's built into it. It's called the crosstab.
Yeah, there might be a feature in
if you get it off
LibreOffice.
right.
There might be a feature in LibreOffice Calc that lets you do that directly, or it may be built into Windows 11. If it's not, then you get a third-party program and do a comparison.
A comment on blocks for doing the update. When I first did it, my main problem was the partition type. I had my disk partitioned as MBRs.
Oh, no, don't
And-
do that.
So I had to convert them to GPT. I used Macroit, or however you pronounce that third-party app, and that would convert them without losing any data.
Okay. There are several partitioning programs. I just didn't want to go into technical details. There's ones from Easius, Minitool, Aomi, and there's all kinds of other ones.
Yeah, but it's just another thing. If you have a computer you've been updating over the years and it still has old partition types, it's another thing you have to get by.
Well, if the computer is that old, it probably doesn't have the security requirements for Windows 11.
No, I get like on my, I take all my data off the C drive and put them on other drives. So I can wipe my C drive and don't lose anything.
Okay.
So when I built new computers, I've just taken those D, E, and F drives and just put them in the new computer. So without having to reformat them. So they remained MBR even though they were in new computers. And that was the block.
Which was the block that you had?
the partition type on these
Okay.
data drives.
Yeah. Oh, it was on your data drives.
Yeah.
It still objected because they didn't have GPT.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyways, it was just another detail I had to get by.
Yeah, well, at least you got details. I didn't very much.
Yeah.
I had to go search, and that took a few days. Okay, Jerry.
Yeah,
you had-
yeah. You briefly just mentioned the Thunder connector, and could you compare that to the high generation USBs, and specifically, why wouldn't one use the Thunder connector and daisy chain off of that?
Okay, Thunderbolt.
Thunderbolt.
It has a total of 20 gigabits per second bandwidth, theoretical, which is twice what you can get with the previous generations of USB. And the problem is, you don't want to boot off of that if you have something bootable, because at boot, the EFI BIOS has not engaged Thunderbolt. It only appears later in the boot process.
But if you were using it for external hard drives and things like that,
Yes, there are plenty.
would
of hubs
that be
you can get.
preferable for saving? Like when I save off, I have a D drive, and to save, it's a big drive. It takes forever to save.
Yeah. If you're going one drive to one drive and you have only
Yeah.
one thing plugged into the port, it's a miracle. It's really fast.
Okay, so can you daisy chain off of that?
If you daisy chain, you are splitting that bandwidth.
Right, that bus. I understand, but you might not be using them at the same time.
You're still splitting. If it's plugged in, it splits it.
Oh,
Well, no, Bob, I think to Jerry's point, it isn't. It's like when you have a power box in your house, you're rated for 100 amps or 200 amps or something like that. If you have all 200 amps available, if there was in fact a 200 amp circuit, if that only one device was on. If two devices were on, you have the sum of your devices available at 200 amps. So if you have a 20 gigabit pipe, if you have two devices on, you don't get the full 20 gigabits. You only get whatever this, you get the limit of each device, or it's shared between the two devices. So ultimately, when you plug into the computer and the information is going through the bus, it's 20 gigabits, but just like your PCI card that you put in there, you only have, say, 10 gigabits for two, or 6 and change for 3, or
I think that's what he said.
Yes, but there's something else. If you have two drives sharing the same bus, I have had problems when there were large file transfers, when the drives were trying to operate really fast. I had data collisions, which resulted in file system corruption.
But if you're
But that's
only
a bus.
using one at a time, do you have all 200 watts available? If you're only
Yeah,
using
yeah.
one at a
You
time,
have all
Right.
20 gig, all
Yeah.
20 gig,
Yeah.
right.
theoretical. Yes.
The problem,
so Jerry,
the
that's
problem
more
you're
efficient.
talking about, Bob, though, is a bus issue. It's it's on the bus controller that's having the problem. It's not isolating each of the channels correctly, and so you're getting overwrite in the processing. So it thinks
yeah.
it thinks that it's done writing the first block
Yeah.
and it starts rewriting on top of that when in fact it hasn't finished its work.
Right.
And so
It's either the bus or a hub. A hub can do the same thing.
Same difference, right? You're exactly right.
And yes, that is where I was having trouble. So my policy is, if it's critical, like a backup or a big file transfer, just do one drive per port and do them in series, or get more ports like I did.
Or you get a very high speed bus.
Yeah. Well, my ports included a high-speed bus.
Yeah, whatever.
It's
Lots
also
of different
dependent.
ways.
It's also dependent on what your motherboard and your processor will support. We could go into lanes and everything, but let's not.
Yeah. Well, at that
Anything
point,
else,
you're blowing away the capacity of the computer.
Yeah.
If it's
Anything else, Jerry? Okay. Ted, anything quick?
Yeah, so I've been, proceeding along in my saga in the background while you've been doing what you've been talking about in the foreground. And I don't know if anybody else is interested, but what I have done is track the nature of the processor situation. It's a 7th generation Core i7, formerly known as KB Lake. And it's, was built in the first quarter of 17, 14 nanometer lithography. And,
Okay.
You would think that would be a pretty modern processor.
Yeah,
It 4
it
cores.
may or may not. The 7th gen from that period, Ted, some will, some won't. One 7th gen is not the same as another 7th gen, even if it says KB Lake. They don't have the same features built into them, the same microcode. It's unfortunate, and Intel is going to screw things up even worse by just calling it Intel Family Processor from now on. You're not even going to know what you're getting.
And you get different clock speeds at the same generation too, don't you?
Well, that and just different features, which is what Windows 11 is objecting to.
Yeah.
Well, it had the 8 megabyte smart cat. It had an 8 gigabytes per second bus speed. I mean, it seemed like it was pretty optimal.
It's just very specific little stinky little details about security features and how they're implemented. And you may even be able to go into the BIOS and enable something called PPT, I believe it is in Intel. That's not real TPM, but it will satisfy the requirement.
I'm reading the Intel compatibility list for Windows 11, and it says only chips from Intel's 8th generation or newer will be compatible with Windows 11.
Right.
So that's why the other screening said CPU compatibility, because it says 7th generation. So it didn't, even though there may be some 7th generation processors that will meet the requirements, they're just cutting it off at the knees, basically, and saying if you're not 8th generation, don't bother coming.
Right. So you're guaranteed if it's 8th, you're on your own if it's less.
Yeah.
And Ted, if you do some research as to why they're doing that, Microsoft has a few articles that'll explain why. Most of them are performance related, because the Windows 11 does a lot of stuff under the covers, that's going on. And if your CPU isn't fast enough and have all the right bells and whistles, it's just going to take forever just to do simple tasks, because it's trying to do things in a very inefficient manner.
I noticed that when I saw the size of the operating system for Windows 10 these days. It's just gotten so ridiculously large that you can understand it. The damn thing is spending all its time paging just the operating system in and out of memory.
Yeah, there's feature bloat, and there's there's increasing numbers of background operations, all kinds of interesting stuff. There's virtualization of security, which also takes up CPU cycles. But anyway, I think we have answered what the hardware blocks are and how they operate. And if you want more information, there's plenty available.
Yeah, so it's a difference of philosophy. With Microsoft version 10, they wanted everybody to go to it. So they made it more compatible with 7 and 8 and everything else. Here, they're just throwing it all out and say, either you got the hardware for us or you're not coming forward and buy a new machine. And most people here are even using desktops. Most of us have laptops that are even more bounded, and it's either going to work or it's not going to work in most cases.
Yeah, and it's a way to move the installed base to newer technology, because otherwise you got people that you have to write software that supports the abacus.
It must cost them a lot to maintain the compatibility.
But
it's a large installed base though too. Yeah, you have big customers that it's cost upgrades.
And you have to realize that there's a small switch in Windows in terms of application compatibility that says that Windows 7 compatibility mode. That's a whole chunk of software that they don't have to maintain if you have a new machine.
Those guys probably retired that built that, right?
Well, it's written it's written in COBOL, so there's nothing to worry about.
I'm just saying,
we should switch to Peter and let him have a little shot at the.
No, this time, 10 minutes, I can do whatever I can do.
Okay, great.
We can do that.
I'm yielding to Peter, and I am in the process of uploading my document.
That was an
Great.
excellent presentation, Bob. Just
Yeah,
excellent.
thanks, Bob.
It will be a PDF format for everybody.
All right. Let's see if I can.
Let me know where it is, Bob, and I'll put it up on the wiki.
It'll be in chat.
How do I do page down? Oh, there we go. Page down this one. Does that work? No, it doesn't. Okay. This is the problem with dealing with a new computer. Oh, I have to do something here. No, not that either. Please stand by.
And as far as I'm concerned, we can run over if other people feel the same way.
Yeah, let me see what's going on with this thing for a second. And I'm here. Whoops. I don't want that.
By the way, I'll comment and say, I think this hybrid form worked fine today.
Yeah. It seems,
As the commissioner of the Ministry of Truth, I am in agreement with that. This really did work out well.
we have to thank Harry or blame him.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank
Good job,
Harry's
good job,
wife.
Harry. Good job.
Thank Harry's
No, I'm
wife.
intentionally off the screen.
Yeah, thank Harry's wife.
Yeah, my wife too for bringing the last two pieces for today.
I'll be back next week, so I'll be able to run the errands again.
So there's actually 21 participants or whatever today. because
Exactly.
There's so many in this room. Not the 17, there's a bug up there.
Actually, I saw 19 at one point. So
Okay.
19,
How many
six
people?
here.
I can find that out from recording.
No,
How many
but
people
we're
are in the room? I
multiplexed
see
differently
5.
here.
Yeah.
How many people in the,
There
in the
were
room?
19 participants at one point, and there are 6 people in the room.
Isn't
Okay,
one of
thank
them
you.
a participant?
You know, while I'm playing with this, for what it's
We
worth,
don't get counted. Oh,
I just went to Zoom to share the screen, and there's something new that I just noticed. There's a little sign that says in the bottom to hold the control key down to select multiple windows to share at one time. I never saw that before.
Oh, it's been there. Yeah,
It's been there?
yeah. I've seen it before.
But you only
Here we go. All
So
right,
do
so
it
pick
fine.
one and go forward already.
Yeah.
let's try this.
There we go. Now, do you have your video running
Video?
on your laptop?
Open video.
No, I mean the camera showing you.
Do I? I don't know. Let's see if we do. Yes.
Okay, now talk.
So if I talk, it should,
Presenter.
Oh, I know why.
because I have my microphone turned off.
Exactly, and that's
Yeah.
how it keys it. And this is the only thing that matters, so we'll always get this camera.
Right.
Okay, there's a little.
So you're gonna move.
No, but that's okay.
But I could always move it.
You can, but then you start moving things around and it gets
Yeah,
crazy.
some other time.
Yeah.
So it's another bug by audio and video.
Yeah, you're right.
You can't move that camera.
Reverb
That's
and then
you
the
can't move that
focus.
camera. That's a union job. You can't.
Oh,
do that.
sorry. Okay,
So
We can
what
see you.
microphone is picking you up,
We
Peter?
can see you.
What microphone is picking you up if your microphone is off?
But that's the room microphone.
The room microphone.
And
That's
we
pretty
just want to
good.
see Peter, not the room.
So it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, the microphone in the room works well.
Yeah,
yeah.
it does. It does. I'm not getting reverberation. It's good.
Yeah, everything's turned off. All right, so the preamble to this thing is I thought it would be an easy thing to do. You know, must have stuff on your computer. You know, you go out there and you see what's available. You look around, the 3 or 4 sources. Everybody says gets the same thing. It's a 5-minute presentation. Done. Okay, that's cool. Not so easy. You know, no, first of all, no reliable source says these are all the things that you need. And secondly, everybody has a different list of what they need. And third, a lot of the list of what you need based on what you're selling. So those are caveats that go with this thing. And I'll get into it a little bit later. I think the bottom line is, in terms of must-haves, the operating systems today, when you get them installed, if you really have to do anything and really have to work with anything, you can get work done without any additional software. There's nothing that you need. So it's coming out of the box, you can do stuff. And then depending upon what you want to do, as I talk about here a little bit, you need to get some additional software if you want to do things more efficiently, a little more than just plain vanilla and bells and whistles and stuff like that. So, take this whole thing with a grain of salt, and, we'll go from there and see what happens. So as I said, most home computers, they come with the basics. You can read mail, you can do text, you can do file organizers, and all this other stuff. And it really depends upon what you do. What do you use the computer for? Everybody uses it slightly different. So before you worry about the must-have software, there were 2 interesting videos that I saw that talk about getting a new computer, and it probably applies to an old computer too, is how to set up your new computer right away and things to do with your new computer right away. So they're interesting to go through and see how it's set up, see what's going on, the tips that you have in terms of the kinds of things you want to have set up and where to start. So set your baseline appropriately. And so here we go. Software categories. There's a million different things, right? Cleaner software, driver update, duplicate photo file, reading application, internet browser, utility software, multimedia. It goes on and on and on and on. And they're all important things if you do these things. If I don't do PDF creation and editing, I don't need it. I don't do file and photo recovery. I don't need it. But people who do, and video editing, what have you. So let's take one category, working from home. There's one place that I saw had this information there, and I don't know anything about a lot of these programs, but they seem reasonable in terms of categories. Clearly, working from home, you need Zoom or something like that, or Skype, whatever you choose to do. Slack is another messaging tool that people know about, and it's used in a lot of offices for collaboration. Remote desktop is built into a lot of software. Any desktop is a commercial version of a similar tool. I've never heard of Workfront. I don't know what's going on with it in terms of how you do that, nor Hubstaff. Cloud storage, Google Drive is certainly one alternative. There are many other things. I do use LibreOffice. This is running on LibreOffice now, this presentation. Malwarebytes, we've talked about a bunch. ShareX, I've never heard of. 7-Zip is one of many file compression extraction things. Password Manager, we've had sessions on that. Bitwarden is only one. Backblaze, we've talked about from time to time before. Rambox is a Windows-centric messaging application. It isn't necessarily a way to get your iMessages on your PC. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And I think the answer is, as Harry says, you can. Clipboard Manager, I have no idea why people want that, but that's okay. And storage management is tree file size. And that's just another thing of talking about where your files are located and what you can do. And from what I've read and what I saw is that if you have most of these, all of these installed, you can maintain a pretty robust homework, work from home environment and do pretty well. And then there's specific things. If you have specific tools, you have scanners, you have specialized printers, you have other things like that, literally the software needed for that. First difference. 7-Zip on the slide before, WinZip on this slide. A different vendor, a different perspective. IOBit protected folder. IOBit's an interesting product. I use the IOBit uninstaller that I have on my machine that goes after the kinds of things Bob was talking about earlier. When things are, you use the uninstall, but there's always breadcrumbs somewhere. And so IOBit is pretty good, and it got good reviews, and it's free, and you can get rid of the things that really shouldn't be there. WinRAR is another compression encryption piece of software. Folder Lock is another work version of these. Gillisoft Privacy Protector, I know nothing about that. I don't know why you want to shred files, but it is what it is. And I'm not sure what shredding means on a computer. It may mean overwriting the sectors to meet mil spec. And in case anybody doesn't know what that means, is that on a drive, when you erase something, all you do when you erase it is you take the pointers in the table of contents for a disk and you delete them. And all disk drives have at least 2 VTOCs, volume table of contents. And the reason they show up in your trash bin is that they're not really deleted, they just move to the special folder first. And that's handled differently. When you release them from the trash, it releases that special flag and they are gone from the table of contents. However, if you choose to take the drive and put it on an oscilloscope or some other device to actually read the drive in an analog format, you can still get the data, which is why the DoD doesn't like just deleting things. So they have a requirement many people know about where you have to overwrite those sectors of the file many times with alternating patterns of 1s and 0s. And so the image never goes away because of the persistence of the data that's there. And I'm not sure how this works on an SSD versus a disk platter, a hard drive, a normal hard drive.
Why not just write all ones?
Because you want to write 1 and 0s, because the way that data is determined is transitions. 1s and 0s have a transition. It doesn't read the 1. It doesn't read a 0 when you're reading data off the disk. It notices the transition. And so at the transition point is when it says, oh, I just got a 1, or oh, I just had a 0. So it's the transitions that matter. And so the 1s and 0s cause the, I think it's flux or something in it, the physical property of the rust to change enough so that it doesn't have any residual values in there.
You need to do it multiple times. So the file deletion is really just orphaning the file so that it's harder to find.
Right.
And then the shredding is using what's known as erasure patterns that go over there and overwrite.
I did no research on it, but I'm guessing that's what it is.
Yeah, that's what they call it in the trade.
And the concern is that you're going to have some magnetic, when you clear
atomic
something,
level.
it doesn't really quite clear
Right.
it. And somebody's going to be smart enough to come in and look at the not quite clear.
And
It's got residual magnetism,
Right.
as they say.
And that's right. And when I was doing this a million years ago is we did 1s and 0s multiple times. And what you find is that each time you do it, you find the residual magnetism decreases. It goes down and down and down. If you do it an infinite number of times, it probably goes to the point where you really can't detect it easily.
That's where shredding it really comes in. You just put it through one of those tree shredders.
That's right. and so that's what I think. That's what I think shredding is in terms of electronic.
That's software shredding, right?
Oh,
Versus
yeah.
hardware shredding.
Right.
Hardware shredding is even more effective.
Be sure.
So we talked about some of these things too. Spotify for certainly streaming. VLC we've talked about earlier. LibreOffice again. I don't know what Digsby is and why everybody needs an all-in-one social media platform, but that's a whole different issue. And Transcode 360, if you're a gamer, you probably know something about that. And I am not a gamer, so I can't speak to that. Professional designers and artists, again, there's an Adobe tool. Inkscape is another one. Corel Draw has been around for a million years, and I don't know anything about what the current versions are, but a million years ago, they were pretty good. Affinity Designer is another one, and GIMP, Bob mentioned, as a image editor.
That's fine, Kim. I mean, I use GIMP all the time and I find it enormously difficult. Do a very simple thing.
You said enormously difficult?
Yeah.
Enormously difficult to do very simple.
Well, that's why it's good stuff.
Actually, I found that this would be a long conversation if we had to settle on any one that we all agreed on.
Yeah. You're right, Bob. And then just a little potpourri of other stuff. Some Movie Maker OpenShot, McAfee Antivirus, Norton Life. I don't know what that is. and Google Drives. So as I said, there's no consensus on any of this stuff. Just, pick and choose, once you know what you need for your work environment, you know the tools you need. And my suggestion is the best thing to do is go out there and do a little research on the specific job you're trying to get done. Find the tool that marries ease of use and degree of complexity that you need, and that works for you.
I haven't tested this, but I've read reviews that say that Win 11 comes with a new video editor that's excellent. I haven't tried it. I don't know. But the reviews say it's really good.
So when we were on Yahoo Groups, there was a spreadsheet where I think we had some software that by group. It hasn't been maintained probably for over a decade. So in theory, I mean, this could make it over to a live Google spreadsheet doc.
Well, I'm going to give this to Steve. He can post it on the on the wiki, and
But
it's
it
there.
could be a spreadsheet that anybody could update because this is a moving target.
No,
And some stuff
absolutely.
works for a Mac. This guy's poor left out, and some doesn't.
Well, and to your point,
Yeah.
this is OS agnostic to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Some of the tools are in fact
Even my
Windows
Mac
centric.
on my Windows 7.
Yeah. Either way. Yeah.
There you go.
Some
And
of
we're
these
going to
tools-
get a lot of
Or
personal
your
opinion.
smartphone.
One second,
You're going to
repeat
get a
that,
lot of
Stan.
personal opinion. Some people swear by Norton, others by McAfee. It's some of this becomes religious.
Oh, it is, and some of us even swear by none of it and just using Windows Defender.
Some swear at.
So Gary Patrick used to come by every couple of weeks and give us an update on the software
Yeah.
for antivirus. And Microsoft keeps absorbing, trying to put everybody out of business by making it native, and then they do backup and everything else. So you can look at what you already have and whether you want to use it or if you want to go, as Peter was saying, something more specialized or different for various reasons.
What just as an aside with the browser, one of the one big change Microsoft made in Windows 11, the Bing browser is no longer a standalone application. It is part of the core of Windows 11. It is just another piece of Windows 11.
And if you go back far, remember when Microsoft did that with Explorer and got antitrust thrown at them? So I guess they have a new lawyer or something.
Yeah,
Well, countries vary too.
yeah, and all that stuff.
Well, another thing is cloud software too, is another aspect to it, right? Where you can do the same thing in a cloud and not have to install too much, if at all.
Yeah.
The other thing about browsers in Win 11 is that Internet Explorer is gone. You can have Edge open websites in Internet Explorer compatibility mode, but IE itself is gone.
Yeah.
But they're all licensing the same engine these days in the.
I use Firefox with DuckDuckGo, so that's that's where I come from. I don't know if it's the last one, but it's one of the last ones. And then, of course, you have specialty software. Some of these I've used, some I haven't, and I know about. Let's see. Adobe Reader, we talked about. Windows Photo Viewer, we talked about. I'm not sure what Rufus is. I haven't used that. PuTTY is a command line tool that you can use for programming. It's a TTY tool.
The Linux protocols.
For Linux protocols and what. Microsoft Defender we know about. Realtek Audio Manager is interesting. CC Cleaner we've talked about before. I didn't know TED had a standalone app. So I guess they do. Dropbox we know about, and ConverterBot. I don't know what's good, better, and different about it. It could have been put on there by the people who wrote ConverterBot, but that's where that is. And then these are all the places that I poked around and tried to get the information from.
So you built that list from some of these sources?
From these sources, going through these sources. And that's why I always put sources in these things.
Sure.
Because you can go back and you can see the bias that people have and see what's going on. I take no responsibility for any of these things.
These are all from this year.
These are all relatively current. Yeah.
Next year will all change again.
So some say Windows 10 for sure. And And I think that's okay, because from an application perspective, Windows 10, Windows 11, the application utility is going to be there.
Peter, can I ask you a question on the references, on getting references? You see
Yes.
many, when you Google things, they'll go like the 10 best software for doing such and such. And I
Right.
always wonder how many of those are sponsored by the companies themselves to get into the 10 best.
Well, I'd say most of the things here were sponsorships.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the people, a lot of the URLs here are product URLs, or at least have their product listed. They'll sprinkle other people's product in there, but their product is listed as the best in class in whatever category it is.
Yeah.
There's different algorithms that are being used to make these things up, but some of them are by sponsorship. Some of them work by how many people click on it too.
Yes,
So there's lots of different ways that they make these references.
Yeah.
absolutely.
So how do you
Absolutely.
know? So how do you know if it's sponsored or not? Because sponsored means nothing, you know.
Yeah, I think what you find is
Are going to be
sort
a
of the
little bit
pedigree.
more-
So if the source of that
Did you want to back
list
up?
is known to be honest, in a sense, as an honest broker, then you can trust that it's probably pretty much the real world. If the source of this thing comes out, there are hundreds of things coming out about, for instance, what cities are the most appropriate place for young adults to want to live or whatever. A lot of those are created as a one-of event that is, put together by the Chamber of Commerce or something like that. And so you never know on some of them. If you don't
Exactly.
know, yeah.
Exactly.
If you
go
go
by
to a
that.
website like PC Mag,
Yeah,
PC
PC
World,
Magazine or one of them that's been around for a long time. And
or
you know.
Tom's Hardware is
Tom's
an
Hardware is a
excellent
good hardware thing.
Yep.
But once
I
you
always
pick the
have the
top three
feeling-
or so, you can do research on them individually
Right.
before you commit to anything.
And I think,
I think hardware tends to be more honest than software.
we can argue about sources,
Yeah.
until the cows come home. And the bottom line is, caveat emptor.
Well,
So-
it's just that I feel like I'm talking to a used car dealer who's telling me that he's honest.
Thank you, everybody. Stay well.